Now, US President Donald Trump has told American trade officials to negotiate critical minerals agreements with Australia and other trading partners to address the threatened impairment of national security. Now, this endorsement comes days after the Albanese government made three minerals that are essential to modern warfare their top priority in the $1.2 billion strategic reserve. Ian, this plan will reportedly safeguard US weapon making against Chinese trade restrictions. But can you explain why it's so important?
Well, we survive on minerals. If we don't have cement, which is cooked up limestone, if we don't have steel, if we don't have plastics, if we don't have fertilizers for food, and if we don't have energy, we don't have society. We don't have the modern society. So minerals are absolutely vital for the modern society. However, not every country is blessed with all the minerals we need. And this is why the US, for many years, had a strategic stockpile of minerals that they don't produce. Minerals like nickel, minerals like cobalt, minerals like vanadium, the platinum group elements, and chromium. And these were needed to keep an industrial society running, and they were needed for the military. Now, the US doesn't have some minerals. It needs to have a strong military presence. One of them they need is rare earth elements. They do have a rare earth element in a mine, which is being resurrected, but they don't have the technology for converting rock into the rare earth element metals. In Australia, we have that technology. We actually have a very, very skilled workforce in the mining industry, which is worldwide, but we are probably better than almost any other country. We have the skills, the US wants them, and the US wants to close off the fundamental commodities that you need to conduct a war. And these are elements like the rare earth elements, tungsten, vanadium, chromium, molybdenum, rhenium. And so the US is trying to secure these worldwide to make sure that those in the more despotic parts of the world, the despotic countries, actually are starved of mineral commodities to be able to run a war. Now, it's quite ironical that the president is talking to Australia because we have an anti-mining government. You've only got to look at what happened to the Blaney gold mine. We have a government that's blown out the bureaucracy to the point where for an iron ore mine recently in Western Australia, we needed 4,950 approvals to build an iron ore mine in an iron ore mining district. Now, that's just madness. In this country, you need 11 approvals. And in this country, we have cheap energy. In Australia, we have created an environment where we have very, very expensive energy. So the president is talking to a country that is killing off its mining industry, and the president is trying to secure resources which are very, very hard to secure from other countries. It can only be short term. So I fear for the future of the Australian mining industry. Once we lose it, it's lost forever. And I fear that this is a short-term action by the president to make America great again. However, it could be at the expense of our mining industry.
Well, that would be a real shame because not only do we need it for energy, we need it for our national security, and we need to help keep our strongest military ally as strong as possible, don't we? Look, let's talk about BHP and Rio Tinto, which have moved to strengthen ties in iron ore. The world's leading miners will be extracting up to 200 million tonnes of iron ore in Western Australia. It comes as iron ore insiders brace for China to try to assert more market power in 2026. Ian, another important protective move against China?
Well, it's a very competitive world we live in, and West Africa now will be putting 100 million tonnes of iron ore onto the market. This gives the Chinese huge leverage for the Pilbara producers like BHP, like Rio, like Hancock, like FMG. And this 100 million tonnes has to be lost from somewhere. So if you can amalgamate two adjacent operations and create large tonnages of much cheaper iron ore, that puts the Chinese under strain. So this is responding to the market, which is ever changing. Now, the Chinese currently dominate the world steel market, but that won't last for long. We send them coal to be able to make the coke, to be able to make the steel. We send them iron ore to be able to mix with the coke to make the steel. And Chinese steel is used all over the world. But there are many countries now with cheap energy, like this country I'm in, that are now saying, well, wait a minute, we have cheap energy. We might not have coking coal, and we might not have huge quantities of iron ore, but we can make steel cheaper than China can. So there are competitors arising all around the world. And what BHP and Rio are doing is cutting costs, trying to compete on the market to make sure that 100 million tonnes of extra iron ore coming from West Africa doesn't push them out of the market. It doesn't allow the Brazilians to get a greater share of the market. So it's a very sensible thing to do, to try to produce the cheapest ore possible. China has got very cheap energy, thanks to Australia and many other countries like Indonesia. And China is quite happy to burn coal. And China is very much aware that over the last 100 years, the proportion of fossil fuels that we've been burning hasn't changed. It's still very, very high. More than 80% of our energy globally is still from fossil fuels. And all the flapping that people are going on about polluting the planet and destroying the planet is just nonsense. You've just got to look at the numbers, and you can see that we are producing and using more fossil fuel than ever. And in Australia, we are committing slow suicide by depending upon the weather to produce electricity. And that means our electricity is expensive, and we're giving away competitive advantage to someone else. So the Rio BHP venture is purely about competition. Make sure that you can produce the lowest cost product of decent quality that will be attractive to the Chinese and maybe elsewhere in the world.
Well, that sounds sensible, and not only, is it suicide, it all seems to be for nothing. We've run out of time, but I was going to talk to you about these large-scale wind and solar farms that have been shown to be wasting a record amount of the power they produce anyway. So you just wonder what it's all for.
But they get a subsidy.
Yes, they still get a subsidy. That's true. Thank you, Professor Ian Plimer. Appreciate your time.